So my spiritual reading for this morning actually came off of one of Richard Rohr's daily reflections, if you get those emailed to you. But it was written by a woman named Sister Jose Hagde, and it came from a book of hers called Simple Living. She says this: simple living is not about elegant frugality. It's not really about deprivation of whatever is useful and helpful for our life. Simple living is about freedom. It's about a freedom to choose space rather than clutter, to choose open and generous living rather than a secure and sheltered way. Freedom to choose less rather than more. It's about choosing time for people and ideas and self-growth rather than for maintenance and guarding and possessing and cleaning. Simple living is about moving through life rather lightly, delighting in the plain and the subtle. It is about poetry and dance, song and art, music and grace. It is about optimism and humor, gratitude and appreciation. It is about embracing life with wide open arms.
Reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Stop worrying then over questions such as, what are we to eat? Or what are we to drink? Or what are we to wear? Those without faith are always running after these things. God knows everything you need. Seek first God's reign and God's justice, and all these things will be given to you besides. Enough of worrying about tomorrow. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Today has troubles enough of its own.
Would you pray with me? Divine Essence, center us here in this space and deep within ourselves, in that place where you and joy reside, beyond the clutter and the worries and the fears, and the to-do lists and everything else that clutter up our lives. Let us touch that simple joy this morning. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be filled with your wisdom and your lightness. Amen. So let me start by talking a little bit about the two readings that we just heard. And we'll start with the scripture that Marilyn shared, because I don't in any way, shape, or form want it to sound like that passage or anything I say is belittling or diminishing anyone who does not have enough to eat or has inadequate clothing. I don't think at all that that's what was meant here. And if you look at that passage in context, we see that it happens right after Jesus is talking to a bunch of wealthy people and saying, don't store up your treasures here on earth. And, because where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And right after that, he's talking about not serving two masters, God and money. So he's talking to people who have stuff, who have money, maybe wealthy people who are all about, oh, are my clothes nice enough? Or, Jesus is coming to dinner, what are we going to have to eat? I think he was using this as a way to guard against superficiality and getting hung up in the everyday just stuff of life. So you're going to figure it out. You've got stuff to wear. You'll figure out what to have to eat. What you need to focus on that's life-giving is your spiritual connection to the divine. And so he's calling us back to focus on that. The second reading is again from Sister Jose, who took her vow of poverty very seriously, but she didn't see it as something that was burdensome or difficult or constricting. Amazingly enough, in that reading, she talks about it being freedom. It was freeing to live simply. She took it very seriously, lived in a small house in Gallup, New Mexico, which is surrounded, little tiny town, surrounded on all four sides by Indian reservation. And she spent her life helping the folks who came to her for spiritual guidance and for material needs. But in that writing, she's just full of, I don't know if you heard it, but for me it's full of contentment and full of grace and full of life. This ability to say, when I let go of some of this other stuff, of the striving to be, like the Joneses down the street, then I have the freedom to just be here in this space and enjoy the world. And she talks about, I can't say it as well as she does. I'm going to read it again because I love the way she says this. Simple living is about moving through life rather lightly, delighting in the plain and the subtle. It's about poetry and dance, song and art, music and grace. It's about optimism and humor, gratitude and appreciation. It's about embracing life with open arms. Doesn't that sound wonderful? To open to life, to the joy that resides deep within, but that we cover up with all kinds of stuff. Sounds so freeing and so wonderful to be in that space. I'm going to back this up. Zoom people, I'm backing you up so I can get closer to everybody else. This is kind of the problem with Zoom, is I can't move and be where I want to be. So I want to talk about decluttering our lives emotionally and physically to feel some of that freedom of more simple living. And all of that is really countercultural because our culture is a culture of scarcity and perfectionism. So what do I mean by that? That our culture is a culture of scarcity. It does not mean that we're running out of toilet paper on the shelves, right? So what does it mean to be a culture of scarcity? Anyone want to try that one?
If somebody else has it, then you don't have enough.
If someone else has it, then you don't have enough. Or a fear that there won't be enough, which is why we didn't have enough toilet paper on the shelves, right? Because everybody went, oh my gosh, they might run out, I might not have enough, I need to hoard it now. It's this fear of never having enough stuff. And this belief that having enough stuff is going to bring you joy and security and stability. Yeah, Maurice.
Supersize it for 50 cents more. You don't need
Supersize
it.
it for 50 cents more.
You don't need it, but
Right, none of us needs that supersize. But wow, it'll make me happier if I supersize it. And what a good deal. Yeah, that's the scarcity mentality. We're not happy enough with one dessert, we need 5. Sue?
How about a scarcity of respect?
A scarcity of respect. Yeah, there seems to be that going around too. Just a common respecting everyone for sometimes for their uniqueness and for their ways of doing things. So the whole perfectionism thing, I probably don't even need to explain that to you because we all get that, right? A culture of perfection says that we're always feeling like we have to strive to be perfect. We hold our athletes up to this, crucible of wanting them to be perfect. Alex, your mom is all the way up here if you're looking for mom. She's still here, don't worry. It's the body image and our models and feeling like, our bodies are never perfect or our grades are never perfect or our job performance is never perfect because no one's as perfect as like Alex is. gonna stay and listen? Yeah? Awesome. So we have those two things going against us when we're trying to simplify our lives. So I want you to think for just a minute. We're going to talk about this, in the decluttering emotionally and decluttering physically. So for yourselves, I want you to think for just a minute about what emotionally is cluttering you and keeping you from touching that joy at times. What holds you back from really embracing that inner joy?
Not feeling good enough.
Fear of failure.
Not feeling good enough.
Not feel good enough.
Worrying.
Worrying. Anybody else? Judgment. Fear of being judged. Anxiety that you're not enough. I can add guilt to the list. Shame, maybe for some of us. Rejection. Anger. Resentment. Those things that we hang on to that feel so, sometimes they feel empowering. Like, it's empowering to be angry, or it can be empowering to hang on to my guilt. Like, I'm such a self-righteous person, I feel so guilty about what I do. There's a weird kind of power in some of those things. And I've had to work at letting go of the guilt over the years, or the not feeling good enough over the years. And I get better at it as time goes on, because I can stop myself and go, oh, you're going down that road again. It's not going to get you anywhere except feeling miserable. And so I've learned to shut it off most of the time. Sometimes I slip down the rabbit hole. So the question is, for you, and whatever your thing is that's keeping you from feeling that joy, can you shut it off? Can you stop yourself from going down the rabbit hole? And if not, if you become obsessed about those things way too often, if it deprives you from living open-armed and, joyfully, living fully as much as possible, do you need to see somebody to talk about that and deal with that? Because that could be a real thing too. And that's okay. It's about finding our true, authentic self and being good with us and not letting it get covered up by all that stuff. And worry is a big one. We all do the worry thing. Brene Brown talks about how in a culture of scarcity and perfectionism, we get hung up on the worry that we're not enough, the worry that we're not secure, the worry that we're not safe, the worry that there isn't enough certainty out there. And she said basically we sabotage our joy. Those are my words, but we sabotage our joy because so we do this, okay? Well, I'm having a really good week, Missy. I got to see my high school friends. Our yard looks great. Julie and I aren't fighting. Neither one of us is sleeping on the couch. We got enough food. We got enough clothes. We're all healthy. Life feels really good right now. What a joy that, no, wait a minute, I can't feel joy. Because it's going so well, the other shoe is going to fall at any moment. And so we hold back on really embracing joy and opening to it because, oh my gosh, something's going to happen any time now because life is going too good. What a silly thing for us to do. So Brene Brown tells a story about a man who was in his early 60s, and he said he thought the way to live life was to live it basically worrying about everything so that he could be prepared when the worst happened. And he figured, that was a great way to go through life. So if the worst happened, he was already prepared and he wasn't going to be, shaken by it. And if it didn't happen, well, that was kind of a pleasant surprise now, wasn't it? And then he was in a car accident with his wife. and she was killed. And he said no amount of worrying about that being the worst thing that could possibly happen could ever prepare him for that to be the worst thing to possibly happen. And he said to that day he continued to grieve all of the moments that he spent with her that were really good moments that he didn't allow himself to fully embrace and live in the joy because, well, something bad's going to happen in the next moment. So his commitment to the memory of his wife was to live life as fully as possible, letting go of all of those worries and preparations for the worst. And he said his biggest regret was that she was no longer around to help him live like that now that he finally figured out how to do it. You know, studies show that only like 8% of what we worry about actually happens. So we can look at that a couple of ways. We can go, well, hey, look, the worrying worked. Only 8% of what I was worried about happened. Or we can say, boy, 92% of the time, I am wasting this energy and this time worrying about something that isn't going to happen. And the other 8% of the time that it actually does happen, well, just like the guy who lost his wife, we can't really prepare for it anyways. So why are we worrying so much? Why do we spend so much of our time and energy put into that? When we lose the moment, we lose the joy of right now. We get to the end of our life and we go, where did it all go? So there's Wayne Muller is a theology, he's a minister, he's a psychologist, he's a speaker, he's a writer, and he tells a story about meeting a woman named Elaine. And he met Elaine a week after her cancer diagnosis. He had been at a cancer center in a big old Victorian home designed to offer medical and companion care to women with cancer. And he gave a talk one night, and Elaine was at the talk. It was the first time she'd been at that center. Again, a week after her diagnosis, and so she's terrified, and she's shocked, and she's feeling alone and lost and confused and all of that. She was pretty much a wreck that night. So fast forward 4 years, and he goes back to this center. And he walks in, and the staff says, Elaine would like to talk to you for a few moments. And so the two of them find a little space off to the side where they have some private space. And he comes to find out that after that one night, she had continued to come back to the cancer center and to get care from their team, their counselors and their medical staff, and all of their folks who helped her to have a healthy approach, body and spirit, to what was going on with her. And she wanted him to know that he had played a crucial role in her staying there and continuing to get that help, and to her changing her life from the inside out, she said. So what he had said that night gave her hope, gave her a sense that perhaps some kind of healing was possible and that she didn't have to do it alone. So, 4 years later, she's a completely different person. She's vibrant, she's energetic, she's full of life and energy and grace. And she says to him, your talk that night really put me on this path to turning my life inside out. She said, I feel like I've been reborn, like I've been given a new lease on life. Like I can just embrace the joy and the fullness of living. And he kind of said, as flattering as all of that was, he was not in a great space to receive it. He'd spent the last 4 years traveling around and speaking, and he was exhausted, and worn out, and distracted, and feeling kind of dispirited, discouraged. And so he said to her, you know, it's really wonderful to hear that. And if that's true that I was some part of, you know, some help for you, then I'm truly grateful. So, but now I need you to be a teacher for me. That I'm having a hard time now. And you obviously have found something that's brought you life, that fills you up. He said, how have you done it? What has made you into this grace-filled, life-filled, beautiful soul? He said, I really need what you have to offer right now. And she said, no, you don't understand. She said, but that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that you gave that to me. And he said, no. He said, no, I want to know how you, he said, what practice do you have? What daily meditation do you use? Or how do you keep yourself centered in this frame of mind day after day? And she paused for a little while and she said, no one knows this but my husband. She said, I'm dying. She said, I'm stage 4. I have about 6 months to live. But she said, it's okay. She said, I'm to a place where I'm okay with that because I'm so grateful for the life that I have, for this amazing life that I have, for the time I've spent with my husband and my family and the people that I love. And again, he said he was sort of stunned because to all outward appearances, it looked like she had a remission or the cancer was gone, and that's why she was doing as well as she was doing. It kind of took him aback, and stunned, he kind of went, okay, but how do you do that? How do you stay centered? How do you stay in that place? And she said, well, let me tell you. I have given up 2 things. She said, I have stopped feeling resentment. She said, because basically she didn't have the energy or the time, really, to carry resentments toward people who had hurt her. She said, I just let go of the resentments. And she said, second, I only surround myself with life-giving people. She said, that was kind of hard. Sometimes it's hard to say no to people. And it can be hard to set boundaries. And it can be hard to not be what other people want you to be. She said, but she'd gotten a lot better at it, and now she was pretty darn good at only surrounding herself with life-giving people. Basically, for the sake of her very life, she simplified, right? She discovered what filled her and what fed her and what kept her going spiritually and emotionally, and she kept those things in her life and she let go of the rest of it. It's a huge lesson for us. To let go of those things and sometimes those people that don't fill us. And embrace the most of life that we can. So that's sort of the emotional decluttering. Then there's the physical decluttering. Rachel Raymond tells a story about a woman who, again we have a cancer woman, sorry, 2 cancer examples, but prior to cancer, she was all about stuff. She collected stuff, just lots of stuff, because she thought it was going to fill her. She always felt sort of lost and empty, and so she literally tried to fill it with things, more books and more magazines and more stuff and more people. More and more people. And the odd thing was that the more she had, the less she experienced. The more empty she felt, the more she had. She said she could have had her motto, looking back on her life, could have said, have everything, experience nothing. Could have put that on her refrigerator, on her front door. Have everything, experience nothing. And then when she went to the hospital for her cancer surgery, she brought a robe with her. All started epiphany with a bathrobe. And every morning she would put on her bathrobe and she would think to herself how wonderful this bathrobe was. How soft it was and how beautiful the color was and how it, moved around her when she walked and how awesome this bathrobe was. And then she'd take a walk up and down the hall. And kind of the odd thing about this was that it wasn't a new bathrobe. She'd had it in her closet for years and she wore it every once in a while, but she had 5 bathrobes. But all of a sudden one morning she put that bathrobe on and she realized, she said it sounded kind of funny, but she had this overwhelming sense of gratitude for her bathrobe. And she realized that maybe for once, because she had very little with her in the hospital, it had given her the ability to actually appreciate what she had. And so when she got out of the hospital, she had a huge rummage sale. And she got rid of more than half of her stuff. Her friends told her she was chemo crazy. But she said it felt so good. And she got rid of those people in her phone that she never talked to. Or that were just acquaintances. She said she didn't even get a card from most of them. So she simplified the stuff so she could experience what she had and allow that to bring her joy. I don't know about you, but I've had those couple of times where on our ASP trips, our mission trips to Appalachia, or just camping. You've got enough, all you've got is what's packed in a suitcase, right? But you have this realization that, this is enough. I've got 20 pairs of shoes at home, but I can do with 2. And then you get home and you're like, oh, but I need all of this stuff. And yet there's a freedom and a joy in that simplicity in those spaces. So the challenge for each of us becomes, and this is the challenge I leave you with, how do we declutter our emotional baggage and our physical baggage so that we can really experience what we have and appreciate it and clear away some of that stuff that covers up the joy that's deep inside. Amen.